With me now is Dr. Jonny Byrne, a lecturer in criminal justice and criminology at Ulster University, whose work has examined paramilitary violence. Good evening to you, Jonny.
Good evening, kids.
We're 25 years on, almost, from the Good Friday Agreement. Did violence from paramilitary groups ever really go away? What has changed in this period?
I know that's the big question. The 25th anniversary this year frames people's views and thoughts of Northern Ireland, and I was writing about it today. And the vision or the aspiration in 1998 was that armed violence would leave our society, and we would be dealing with politics and dealing with issues through peaceful and democratic means. But the reality is that armed violence, paramilitaries, and terrorism has still dominated the security landscape since 1998, and it's dipped at times, and we've thought that it's nearly disappeared to a certain extent, and then all of a sudden we experienced what we did last night with that horrific incident with John Caldwell, and that brings us back down to reality again.
Why was Detective Chief Inspector John Caldwell targeted?
I think, although nobody's claimed responsibility for it yet, the police's investigations are leading them towards dissident Republicans, and particularly the new IRA. And obviously they're against the peace process, they're against the Good Friday Agreement, and they see the security services and the new police service as legitimate targets. So in that sense, that's why he was targeted in their pursuit, or their attempt to, in a strange way, pursue their idea of a united Ireland. So in that sense, that's why he was targeted. The other reason as well, potentially, is to try to weaken the legitimacy of the police within communities. So there's a sense that by targeting a police officer, it tries to change the culture within the police. They would become more insular, more defensive, and less open and transparent. And then that way, then they would be looking to try to break down relationships between the police and the community, which have been good and strong and positive over the last 2 decades.
So creating a them and us situation, trying to break down the relationship between public and police, and they trust, most importantly.
Yeah, Kate, this isn't new. This isn't a new play or tactic. This is something that paramilitary organisations and contested societies have done since the beginning of time. They've tried to create an us and them mentality, a siege mentality, and they've tried to use the police at times as ways of forcing their argument in their hand. So I believe this would be their attempt in terms of trying to create an argument that they aren't legitimate, which then knocks into trust and confidence, and that would be their long-term goal here. Because realistically, their ideas around a political approach to United Ireland are ridiculous in that sense.
The 3 men arrested are aged 35, 45 and 47 years old. When the Good Friday Agreement was signed, they were very young, of course. Is there a new generation emerging? Are they the result of a new generation, or just of the fact that underlying tensions have been continuing over the years? I guess people will be concerned about whether this will start a new wave of aggression.
I think there's a couple of things there. I find Northern Ireland really difficult to explain to people, particularly visitors. When they try to Northern Ireland peace process, 25 years, there's a view that we're a different place, and then all of a sudden there's a terrorist incident such as last night, and people sometimes start to reminisce, and the images go back to the conflict and the bad old days. And in answer to your question about a new generation, we have had steady incidents of violence since 1998. So this isn't new, sadly. But you're right, the 3 people who were arrested were all under 50. And what one could argue is that in particular pockets of communities in Northern Ireland, there still is this sense of acceptable level of violence. There still is a culture of violence, a commemoration around violence, a memorialisation around violence. And there's an argument that the rule of law should be contested, and there's an acceptance that this is a legitimate form of protest, for want of a better word. And so that does exist in certain pockets of communities. That wouldn't be representative of society. So that's the broader point. It becomes really difficult to try to describe Northern Ireland 25 years after the Good Friday Agreement.
Very briefly, Jonny, we've been hearing a lot about Northern Ireland, of course, in the news over the last week to 10 days because of the negotiations going on over the Northern Ireland Protocol, part of the Brexit deal. Will that have had any influence?
No, I don't think that has any influence whatsoever. We've seen all the politicians coming out today condemning this. We will see a very important image tomorrow when all the leading leaders of the 5 parties go to meet the Chief Constable, and then there'll be a statement after that. So there's no sense that the vacuum in politics has led to this. But what I would say is it doesn't help. Kate, it doesn't help when we have a vacuum at the political level. It just leaves oxygen and space for other groups to take over.
Well, look, it's been really fascinating speaking to you. Thank you so much. Jonny Byrne, a lecturer in criminal justice and criminology at Ulster University. Good to speak to you, Jonny. Thank you.